Hello and welcome to another episode of Chats with Chelsi. I am thrilled that you've joined us here for today's episode. I have an amazing guest for us today, another fellow woman leader. She is the president of ThirdSuite, which is a consulting firm. She contributes to the nonprofit Quarterly, which she has some great articles out there. She is also has her own podcast called Nonprofit Confidential, and we're fellow Junior League members. So Chats with Chelsi community, help me in welcoming Sheela to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sheela, I mean, it feels like we were just having brunch a few weeks ago. I think it's been some months there at Maple and Pine, and I'm just thrilled that you are here in the studio. So thank you so much for joining me.
Oh gosh, thank you so much for having me.
So let's just jump right in. So you went to school, you have an MPH, you have a BS in neurology. How did you start there and now you're like all things nonprofit?
Yes, everyone always asks that. It's so funny. So my background in undergrad was neurobiology, and went into undergrad thinking I was going to be pre-med and do the whole doctor thing. That was just my dream since I was a kid.
Wow. Okay.
And got to undergrad and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. But I was volunteering at the time at a student-run free clinic.
Okay.
And one of our projects was to get prescriptions for people who are experiencing homelessness. That was the main population served by our clinic. And I ended up working on a really cool project. We were able to get prescription vouchers from the Target pharmacy. And, you know, I really saw the benefits of creating a system of change as opposed to helping people one-on-one. And that kind of started shifting the way I was thinking about healthcare from one-on-one patient care to, if I take a step back and I can change glitches in the system, I can impact a lot more people. And so from there I decided to do a public health degree, moved out to Boston from California, and learned all about the systems and how laws are passed, how advocacy helps. And after I graduated from that program, I got my, I decided to kind of jump right in, and I did an AmeriCorps year. And I worked at a nonprofit organization serving people with disabilities. It was a mentoring program. And from there, I just fell in love with the sector, which sounds really weird, but it really opened my eyes to how the nonprofit sector fills in gaps where the other two sectors can't.
Yes.
So you have your for-profit industry that's very focused on bottom line, and the government sector that, with changing administrations, you can't always affect the change long term that you would like to see. So the nonprofit sector, sometimes called the third sector, is really the only player in this game who could see the results long term and is more just invested in the outcomes.
You know, as I'm listening to you, it's so amazing to hear, because as you were sharing, you wanted to be a doctor. That was about service, right? And about helping people. And so you still are following that which was always on the inside of you. It just took a different route. And I think that's so important for us to recognize, one, as women, that, what we're passionate about, where that passion may play out in a different way than what we expected. And I appreciate your honesty of the fact that, you went in and you always wanted to be a doctor, yet college showed you that, hey, that is not. And for me, it's a little bit similar, because I always wanted to be a forensic pathologist, and I dissected a frog and thought, oh my gosh, I can dissect humans. And college helped me realize that was not my path. And so I was a little further off, but it's so great, and so I appreciate you sharing that with us. Tell us about, you college, you came to this place of, oh my gosh, this sounded great, but in reality, this is just not for me. You went and volunteered, you did, and you found where you were supposed to be. So take us on your journey of how you were director of operations for an organization, and now you are the president of your own consulting firm. So take us through that journey.
Sure, yeah. So kind of following the same path of starting out with thinking I wanted to do one-on-one patient care, then going into nonprofits. Even when I was working at a nonprofit organization, organization, I felt like my passions were so wide-ranging.
Okay.
So even though I was working with one organization, I felt like I couldn't completely dedicate myself to one cause. I felt like there was more in me that I wanted to explore. I wanted to have an impact on multiple different organizations and causes at the same time. And so when I heard of consulting for nonprofits, it seemed like the perfect combination, because you get to combine the service angle, you get to combine kind of looking at the system and figuring out how to fix those glitches, and you get to work with so many organizations at the same time. So
That's true.
As soon as I heard about it, I was like, yep, that's it. That's what I've been waiting for.
Were you afraid? Were you nervous?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, so scared. It took a really long time for me to actually take the leap and do consulting full time. I started out, when I was in Boston, I kind of had a little side hustle taking on like one or two clients here or there. And then I ended up meeting my husband out in Boston, and he got his first job in Virginia. So when we moved here, I was kind of just looking for stability. So I got a job at a nonprofit organization in town, and I really loved my coworkers. It was so fun and so safe. But my husband at the time was like, you've always talked about consulting, and you seem to kind of be settling. And, kind of definitely called me out.
Yes,
and,
I like it.
You definitely need people in your life that are going to call you out. And, we talked about it, and we were just like, if there's ever a chance to do it, we're, married, no kids. If I was going to do it, now's the time to do it. So, so I gave my notice to my boss at the last organization that I worked for.
Okay.
And she was very supportive. They became my first client, and from there it just kind of started to grow. So it was definitely a very scary jump, but I think there are like little steps you can take to make yourself feel a little bit more safe in the process.
So when you gave your resignation letter to your former boss, did you have clients ready?
No. None. I had, I've been working in the sector for about 10 years. So I had contacts, and all of my close friends work in nonprofits, and, they were very supportive. So as soon as I took the leap and formed the organization, I had people that were, I feel like once people hear what you're doing, they're like, oh, I know someone, or oh, here's my friend, or I want to start something on my own. So your network starts to grow as soon as you kind of put it out there in the universe that this is what you're doing.
And so, how long has that been, Sheela?
It'll almost be 2 years.
How have you handled, for the women out there who are watching, who are tuning in right now? You took a huge leap, right? Not this client book like already solidified, or these contracts, and you said, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm passionate about. How have you sustained yourself mentally, emotionally? Because as business owners, we know that each day is based off of, what you were able to fight for, what you were able to get the previous day. So how has that been? How has it been?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. It really makes you stop and think I can't believe I did that, It seems so risky now that I look back on it, but at the same time, I think at a certain point you kind of reach that point of pain where if I don't do it now, I have to do it right now. I don't care what it takes, this has to happen for my life to go the way that I want it to go. So I think I had reached that pain point where staying where I was no longer pleasurable to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Working my 9-to-5 job wasn't going to make me the person that I wanted to be in the future. So at some point you have to rip the Band-Aid off. And so
you did that.
That was it. That was just, let's just see what happens. And I always kind of knew in the back of my head, if I completely bomb, if this thing does not work out, the worst thing that will happen is I'll just go back to getting a 9-to-5 job.
I love that you had that in the back of your mind, because I think so often we are afraid of failure. And, to the point that you just made, that's something that my husband he always pushes me. Okay, well, what's the worst that can happen, right? And if that's the worst, are you willing to take the risk for the worst? And I think so many women need to if being an entrepreneur, business owner, president of their own consulting firm is where they want to be, it is, okay, I can succeed or I can fail. Am I willing to take this risk? And you decided to take the risk. And so how have you been able to keep going each day? Like, every day of being a business owner is not fun, and, you know, it's not fun. How have you moved? How do you push yourself during those tough days?
I think having a support network really helps. My sister and I are incredibly close, so
Okay.
you know, if I come out of a client meeting and I'm upset, I can text her, give her a call, and have someone to kind of bounce that off of. And my husband, like I said, he's the one for tough love. So when I'm getting too deep into my own pity party, kind of like snaps me back out of it.
That's awesome.
So I think having the balance of the two people that I'm closest to has really helped keep me grounded and keep me focused on what truly matters. But yeah, there are those days you wake up, you're like, why am I doing this again? Like, why didn't I stay in my nice, safe job where I love my coworkers and we all had lunch together every day while I'm like shoving a salad in my car trying to like make it to the next client meeting. There's definitely those days. But you know, I'm not sure if have you ever heard of Simon Sinek? He has this like he has a book called Start with Why.
Okay.
And he talks about like really figuring out why. Before you even figure out how to do something, he's talking about like figure out why you're doing it. And you know, having worked in the field for a long time, my why was like very solidified. I knew exactly why I was doing what I wanted to do, and the impact that I saw the sector having long term. And so for me, my why was always just leave my mark on the sector, because I just so truly believe in the power of nonprofit organizations. So every day that, you know, even if it's a really crappy day, if I have a conversation with someone and they said, hey, you know, you helped us build a database and now we're able to do X, Y, Z, just keeping those little tidbits in the back of your head as little successes that can get you through those tough days.
I love that. Awesome. So that's your book recommendation to the ladies,
yeah,
right?
Such a good book.
Great. Sheela, you had your why, but over the 2 years, how have you been able to figure out how to run a business?
So much trial and error, and just constantly soaking up information from people. Like I feel like every single person you meet has something to teach you, and it's kind of funny because when you think back on these little conversations you've had with people, it really ended up leading to such pivot points in your life or in your business. So for me, I ended up meeting I met a girl at a wedding who was starting her own medical practice, and so she ends up reaching out to the Small Business Association where she lived, and I'd never even heard of that before, and I was like, well, you know, I'm interested in starting a business. I'm going to contact the Small Business Association where I live. And from there I met a mentor, and she helped me come up with the name ThirdSuite, and then kind of helped me learn what a business plan was and how to get started. And then, you know, everything kind of just like spirals off from there, you know, so like you don't really even realize it at the time that it's happening, but these little conversations can really make a huge difference.
Tell us what your consulting firm focuses on for nonprofits.
Sure. So right now we're offering kind of a suite of services. So bookkeeping and administration, fundraising assistance, and database optimization. So the database platform that we mainly focus on is Salesforce. But even for organizations that, you know, Salesforce isn't a good fit for, we kind of help them figure out what is the best database for them to use. And yeah, from there we're kind of branching out. I clearly love to think big picture, so we're stepping back and doing some, creating some courses as well.
Wow, that's awesome. And you have a podcast.
Yep.
Nonprofit confidential.
Yes.
That was putting everything together. Nonprofit confidential. Tell us the why behind the podcast.
Sure. So, okay. So what I noticed was a lot of times nonprofits would get information from consultants, and the information that we as consultants offer can sometimes be theoretical. It's not always specific to the organization. So for instance, as a consultant, I can come out and declare best practices. But for a really small organization, that may not be a good fit, or they may not have the capacity to actually implement the ideas that you're sharing with them. So I created Nonprofit Confidential to be a platform for nonprofits to offer their, insider tips and hacks to other nonprofit organizations. I feel like as in the sector, we can get very creative with the, budgetary constraints and all these other constraints that are put upon us. So a lot of organizations have found very creative ways to become successful in what they do.
One thought that comes to mind is I love that you have the podcast. I think that it's so important, as you were just sharing, for nonprofits and just to understand, for nonprofit leaders to understand that it's not one size fits all sometimes for the solutions that they need. How do you balance, if at all, giving advice and still being able to gain business? Right? Because someone could come to your podcast. I was listening to an episode last night, very informative because you did a mini series on fundraising. And if I listen to the podcast, I could go take it and implement it. How do you keep yourself in the mix?
That's a really good question. For me, I've always thought about it as the better the sector is, the more people we can help, or if it's not people, it's animals, whoever. The better, everyone will be better. So I've always thought that if I could share this information, I don't think it's competition or it's gonna mean I'm no longer relevant. Maybe it means my business model pivots. Maybe it just means I podcast full time, which would be amazing. I would love to do that. So I feel like if I can help people elevate their fundraising game, then that means maybe the project that I help them on is the next level, like getting from here, and maybe now they listen to podcasts, they're here, I want to take them even further. And if they can get that much information out of my podcast, that would just be so amazing.
Well, I love that, because sometimes it seems that, especially as business owners, for whatever sector we may be in, we are concerned though about competition and putting ourselves out of business. And so I just love that in you of you want to share, you want to help. And I think that I asked a question to just pull more out of you. Yet for the most part, what I have learned is that even with information, people still are going to rely on a consultant or strategist, someone who may be the expert to help them actually implement it, even though they may have the understanding of it. Because also, as you think about nonprofits, this third sector, Sheela, most nonprofits are smaller, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the resources, and so they still need someone like you.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of organizations, they know what to do. It's like you said, it's having the capacity to actually implement it. If there's, you can have all the fundraising knowledge in the world, but if they don't have the person to actually do the fundraising, what can they really do?
Call you.
Exactly.
Call you. So one of the things also is you are a contributor for the Nonprofit Quarterly. Was looking at some of your articles, just a wide range of topics. Yeah. Tell us why you write, how you got connected with Nonprofit Quarterly, and then the third part of the question is why such a variety of topics?
So Nonprofit Quarterly is such a great resource for nonprofit organizations. I started reading it, years ago when I first started out in my career, just to figure out what the trends are. So Nonprofit Quarterly is itself a nonprofit, and they look at trends in the industry, but they also look at news stories. And our job as writers is to look at news articles and tease it apart, dissect it, and figure out how what they're talking about influences the nonprofit sector.
Okay.
So, for me, that was just the perfect, mix of information. There's kind of the angle of actually strengthening the sector, looking at news topics and what can we learn from what's happened, not only in our own sector, but also in popular culture, in politics, and kind of pulling it all together. Because, at the end of the day, we don't operate in a silo. So,
it's true.
What happens in the world is going to impact the work that we do as well. So that part of it was just really interesting to me. And there's a tiny part of me that just really loves to write.
Okay.
It's so random, but I've just always really loved writing. And it would just seem like such a good opportunity. So they were actually looking for writers, and I just was like, you know what, let's just see what happens. I've always loved writing. It's been a strength of mine for a long time, so I figured I'd just give it a shot. And so I threw it out there. They were very helpful. They make me seem like a much, much, much better writer than I am. Their editors do a fantastic job. And it's been such a cool learning opportunity.
Absolutely.
Not only as a writer, but also to just learn more about the sector, and it kind of makes me think about things in a new way. So it's such like a win-win opportunity that I get to hone in on this craft that I really enjoy, and get to learn more about my sector and learn more critical thinking.
So you're just continuing to push yourself, to grow, to develop. So president of ThirdSuite, you have Nonprofit Confidential. I got it right that time. You write for the Nonprofit Quarterly. You're a wife. You're involved in the community because we're in junior league. How do you manage your time? How are you able to do that?
Oh my gosh. I would say I don't manage my time very well. It does not feel that way most days. But I'm someone who definitely really likes to keep learning, and I don't think I'm overly critical of myself, but I constantly like to analyze what I'm doing.
Okay.
To see how I can make it better. And one thing that I've learned that has been really helpful just managing all of these different projects has been the system, David Allen's system called Getting Things Done.
Okay.
It's a super old book. Like, the references in the book are from like the 80s and 90s. But the system itself is actually really good. And so he kind of talks about every time you figure out that you need to do something, have something on you where you can write it down. So for us these days is our iPhones. So as soon as I think of something, like quickly jot it down in there. And kind of going through like a triage process almost of, okay, you have like a place that you dump everything in, and then you have to figure out where it's going to fit in your calendar. And so moving everything from like a to-do list that's just ongoing to your calendar. And once it's on the calendar, it's so weird. Like, as soon as I get the ding on my phone, I'm like, oh my gosh, drop everything. I have to do this thing because I said I would. Even though, I'm the one who put it in there. Yeah. For some reason, it feels like much more official when it's coming from your iPhone.
And you get the reminder.
Yes.
That's awesome, because I know sometimes I struggle with doing stuff for myself.
Yeah.
Yet, though, I think that that's a great way and an opportunity for women to be able to keep the commitments to themselves, keep their promises to themselves, because what we said and what we want to do and what we set in motion is important too.
Yes, yeah, and I feel like especially with women, the pressure to do it all is just so great. And even if you're in a relationship where no one's telling you that you need to, cook and put hot meals and do laundry and everything, for some reason, some of us, I think, feel just intrinsically like this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
Probably just growing up in society, those are the messages we hear, So those days where I'm like working until 10 p.m. and there's piles and piles of dishes that are, right in front of me, you can begin to feel really bad. But I think that once you learn a better system for managing expectations and figuring out what you can really do in a day, using the calendar kind of forces you almost to track your time, so you can see like, no, I've been working 12 hours today. It's okay that the dishes are not done. There's a reason for that, not just, watching Real Housewives all day, although that just happens too. Let's be honest.
Sometimes you have to have some me dates,
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. I love that, though, about the expectations on women. I know it's something that I face as, I'm still a newlywed, because based off of Google, newlyweds are Wikipedia, it's 4 years. So we're at 3. So I'm still
at 3 too. We're good.
I'm still a newlywed. But one of the things that I really had to learn was I have to learn my husband and what his expectations are, right? And not that I'm going to meet all his expectations or that we're going to agree, but to learn them, because to your point, for my husband and I, we figure out our meals for ourselves throughout the week.
Yeah. And
then Friday is date night, and that's when we're together. And in the beginning, I was so like, oh my gosh, I'm a wife, I have to come home after work, I have to cook, have this hot meal on the table, and I'm sure John wants me to cook probably a little bit more, but he's been very clear of, no, you have your place, you have the things that you're passionate about. And so it's been so freeing of, you know what? what I saw on TV,
Yeah.
again, where they're working a 9 to 5 or whatever it may be, and with the kids, right? We don't even have kids.
I know. Yes, that's like a whole other layer.
And so it's, for me, I can just share personally, it's just been freeing to have. For us, we're a team, right? And so some weeks he's done the dishes and the clothes, right? And other weeks, okay, I'm in, right? But it's just been so freeing for me to have to know what the expectations are, right? Us to come to agreements on that.
Yeah.
Because it's helped me as a woman, right? It's helped me in my identity of what it means to be a wife and what it means to be a wife to John, right?
Yes.
Because that may look different for you and your husband about what the expectations are. And so
that's such a good point, that it's how to be a wife to or how to be a partner to the person that you're with, whether maybe your agreement is, woman stays home, does the dishes and everything else. Maybe it's, she's the breadwinner and, their partner stays home. It looks different.
It looks
wife
different.
Is not just like a generic category. It's specific to your relationship. I love that. It's such a good point.
Yeah, it's like, oh my, in my mind, it's like, yes, and for us as women to accept that and not allow TVs, the social media to define who we are in our house.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Because you go on Instagram and Pinterest, and these people have like organic, non-GMO, this and that, and it looks beautiful, and then they look cute, and you're just like, how did you do that all in a day while also running a business and a blog? And I mean, it's just not reality.
It's not. Thank you for saying that. I'm so big on, probably talk about it almost every episode, just about social media and us not allowing it to define us and who we are, even our expectations, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that's so important to me with Chats with Chelsea is that we have these authentic, transparent conversations, because what a business owner looks like to you in your journey is going to be different from the next person I bring on. And I just want women to know that they can take best practices, they can take tips, yet they have to make it their own journey, because all the variables are not the same. They may have kids, right?
Yes.
And so before they jump out, they may need to have 5 secure clients,
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, and I love that. It's so true. You really need to know all of the details before you say, like, this is the person that I want to emulate, or, that's going to be my mentor, because it really does look very different. And social media really allows people to kind of glamorize owning a business in a way, like the whole idea of like hustling, like I'm going to go work 12 hours a day, and it makes it seem very glamorous to always be busy. But those days that you're working that hard, I mean, they're exhausting. I mean, it sounds like so common sense, but when you actually live through a day like that, you're like, why am I doing this to myself?
But it goes back to what you were saying earlier. Your why was solidified.
Yes.
Your why was solidified.
Yeah.
And so that is so huge. So what is your advice, as we are closing down, to young women who are seeking a career in this third sector in the nonprofit world?
I would say just do a lot of introspection and really, focus on personal growth, and everything else will fall into place. As soon as you know what it is you want to do and the impact you want to leave on the world, because we all will leave an impact one way or another.
That's right.
And so through the process of introspection, I think you really learn the ability to control that outcome. So yeah, just take time for yourself and learn yourself.
I love it. How can ladies get in contact with you, learn more about your podcast, your writings, and ThirdSuite?
So everything is pretty much on Instagram and Facebook. We're at ThirdSuite, and on our website, www.thirdsuite.com, and that's where we have all the show notes. All the podcast episodes are up there. And if anyone ever wants to reach out, I'm always happy to chat with anyone. So it's Sheela@thirdsuite.com.
Sheela, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
It was. Listen, ladies, I hope that you have enjoyed my conversation with Sheela as much as I have. So let me just be honest. I didn't want to mess up her last name, so I'm going to let her tell you her last name, because we practiced it. And yeah, I'm just being super honest and transparent. I figured I was just going to jack it up. Sheela, share with them your whole name.
Sure. It's Sheela Nimishakavi.
There we go, Nimishakavi. Oh, I got it after she said it, but that wouldn't have happened probably in the beginning. So
You got it, you're good.
Well, ladies, again, thank you so much for joining. I hope for those of you who are interested in nonprofit that you'll reach out, you'll listen to her podcast, and you'll read her writings there at Nonprofit Quarterly. She talks about criminal justice to education and everything in between. And as you know, we are in the process of accepting donations for our second annual Mother-to-Be celebration. So if you would like to help us bless a mom in need, head over to lifewithchelsea.com. You can click foundation and learn more ways to donate to help us really bless these moms, bless their socks off. So again, thanks for joining us for this episode. Have a great week.